Welcome to Confessions of a Parent Coach. I'm Coach, a mother of four, and potty talker, Ann Kaplan. This is the podcast where I confess something from my own parenting and coaching life, teach a lesson around it, and answer your questions. Even we parenting experts are far from perfect, and the real magic happens when we get down with all that imperfection. We get into the gritty side of parenting here, so earbud up and dive in.
Welcome in, podcast listeners. Excited to have another episode of the podcast with you today. And before we get started, I just need to get something off my chest, which is it is freaking hot right now and I am melting. I have air conditioning, but it can only do so much. It is that time of year in Denver where it was like 100 degrees and I have a visceral, like, survival mode reflex that is just like, I can't be here. We should not be living here. Human beings should not live in this condition. Like we are the problem. So I am like sitting here with my hair like all frizzy and my entire body feels sticky and I'm wearing like a janky ass tank top. It's so hot. I'm so ready for this to cool down. Now, you guys are going to be listening to this in the future. So maybe when you listen to this, you're looking outside at a blustery, cool fall day and thinking, what is she talking about? But right now, today, as I record this, it is August and it is 100 degrees. So, OMG. Um, what we're going to talk about today is the thing that I think every parent hears, even if you have an only child, you hear, it's not fair. How often do you hear that? And I have four kids, so you can imagine how often I hear this stuff. We all deal with it. It's not fair. So and so has this, or it's not fair. My brother got that, or you let her do it. So how come I don't get to do it? Right? Fairness. And even though I think that a lot of us already have, probably from a 30,000 foot level, a pretty healthy idea about fairness, when it comes to actual execution, when the rubber hits the road, I don't think we're nailing it. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. And of course, got to start us off with a confession. My confession to you is that my house is not fair. Like, I don't even try with the fairness thing. And I'll give you a great example, which is Instagram. My daughter is 14. She's been 14 for a while. She is a freshman in high school. She got Instagram yesterday. So I feel like giving myself a little pat on the back because we made it all the way into high school before social media with her. But the truth is, like, that wasn't the rule with all my kids. I have two kids who are older than her, and they both got social media much younger. And I would say now, looking back on it, too young. And as time has gone on, how it's all come out in the wash is that none of them had the same rules around social media or Instagram or their phones, even, than the others. So you can imagine anyone out there with teenagers, or even just anyone out there with kids who love screens, can imagine the rhetoric that I have listened to over the years about fairness. But I don't give a shit. And here's why. You probably already know this. This is what I mean when I say at the 30,000 foot level. You probably have a really healthy concept about fairness. You probably have already heard this expression, fair doesn't mean equal, right? It's pretty common in like the world of parenting. And it's true. So I think we all know that at that like high level, right? Like, of course, if we have more than one kid, first of all, most likely your kids are not the same ages. So they're different right then. But then also, like, every kid's different, right? Every kid has a different personality, has different strengths and weaknesses, has different abilities, has different needs, has different values, even. So, of course, the concept of doing right by our children, which in my opinion is what fairness means as a parent. What is fair for our children? Fair means giving them what they should get from a parent, having their needs met, being seen, being attuned to. When you look at fairness through that lens, it completely flies in the face of equality. Because if the cornerstone, one of the benchmarks of good parenting is attunement with our children, and no two people on this planet are the same, it would be insane for us to think that it was good parenting to give our kids all the same stuff. That's the opposite of attunement. It's actually the opposite of that benchmark. And I think that a lot of us already know that. And we may have even said it to our children. And we may even use it to justify the fact that we aren't being quote unquote fair. What kids really mean when they say fair is equal, right? But here's where I think we go astray. We might understand this at that big, high level place, but I don't think that we're really 100% embodying it. It might be something that we understand intellectually, but we haven't truly like integrated it, or we empathize with our kids when they feel like life isn't fair. And then we feel this like push and pull, this kind of tug of war about giving them what they want. Where we really go astray with this fair doesn't mean equal thing is using that concept in like actually what we say and do to our kids or with our kids, meaning it's great for us to internally know fair doesn't mean equal. And I know what my North Star is as a parent. So I feel rock solid in what I'm doing. Fabulous. But then we go one step further and we say to our children, when they say something isn't fair, we say, hey, you know what? Fair doesn't mean equal. Fair doesn't mean equal has now become like the 2020 version of life's not fair. We are using it to shut down our kids' emotions. Because just because something is good, just because you know that you're on the right track, just because you know rock solid in your heart of hearts, you are doing right by your child, doesn't mean your kid's going to feel that way. And it absolutely does not protect us from our children's negative emotions. Our kids get to feel however they want to feel about everything that we do and say and boundaries we set with them and all that stuff. So, what accidentally happens when we sit down and explain to our kids or justify or defend the rules that we have that seem unfair to our kids, what we actually end up doing is totally invalidating their emotions. We're accidentally, when we say, hey, fair doesn't mean equal, suck it up, buttercup. When we say that, what we're really saying is, here's why you shouldn't feel how you feel. Here's why your feelings are wrong. And that's never good in parenting. Instead, I think we really need to get comfortable with our kids' discomfort, be with them in their sadness, validate their emotions when something's not fair, and just know in your heart of hearts, you're on the right track. Even if your kid doesn't see it, that's okay because you're the grown up. And even if they're really upset, that's okay. And you can simultaneously be the person who enforces the container and the person who comforts the kid in the container. That's totally possible. And if you don't believe me, I just wrote an amazing blog post about this and how it is possible to be the heavy and the heart at the same time. And it totally is. You have, I guarantee, saw your kid at one time in their life simultaneously be really sad about a consequence you gave them and then climb into your lap to get comforted about their sadness, right? Like if you're doing a really good job enforcing the container, your child experiences the container, not the enforcer, if that makes sense. So it's totally possible to use this instead when your kid says this is unfair or you're so unfair or you're a hypocrite or what, all the things I could tell you my kids have said to me about this whole Instagram thing. When they say that to you, instead of justifying and explaining why it is actually fair, I want you to switch to just validating their emotions. Makes perfect sense you would say that. I totally get it. If I saw my sibling getting something that was different than what I got, I would feel that was unfair too. I'm so sorry. This sucks. I get it. And your child is probably, depending on how old they are, at their pay grade, at their level, they are going to try to do this compare and despair thing. Here's where we need to keep our eyes on the prize. Your kid is going to be throwing up this comparison stuff. You need to focus solely on your child. So, well, I'll give you an example from my family about this Instagram thing. My daughter, Gigi, is the one who had to wait the longest to get Instagram. And it's because when she was younger, even before she had social media, she was making some poor choices with some social situations like group chats and stuff like that that showed us and her, to be honest, I need to give Gigi full credit. Like she came to us and said, I think I'm making some big mistakes here. And she was right. She was. And we collectively agreed, like, I think we may have jumped the gun on this phone stuff. We're going to take a step back, and we got a different kind of a phone for her with lots of parental controls and all of that stuff. And we had an agreement that, you know, once you've demonstrated that you're really ready for more, we're going to do it. Well, it took her a long time to demonstrate that, and that's why she didn't get Instagram until recently. Well, I would have conversations with her all the time. Of course, doesn't matter if she had buy-in in the beginning. You can bet your butt that like over the last couple of years, she's whined at us about how we won't let her have Instagram, even though it was something we all mutually agreed on. And when she would say that stuff to me, she would say, well, you let River have it when he was 13. You let Elijah have it. And, you know, he had this problem with substance abuse, blah, 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 right? All the compare and despair stuff under the sun. And I would validate her emotions. So I would say, yep, you're right. That probably is really frustrating for you. I get it. And you're right. That is true. Like what you're saying is accurate. And I don't say one thing about her siblings when I talk to her about that. I'll say, you're right. That is true. And we know that you're not ready yet. We know exactly when you're going to be ready. It's when you show X, Y, and Z. And I can't wait for you to grow into that. And you totally will at your own pace. And pretty soon you can see how I'm going more and more into like, this is what I see in you. I've seen you do this. I've seen you do that. I'm really excited for you. I know that you're going to figure this out when you're ready. And I'm right here with you as soon as you do. And pretty soon, this conversation, like her brothers have no place in that conversation. The conversation is solely about their experience, what they're working on, their own personal journey, their own personal milestones, their own personal goals and objectives. And your child, instead of feeling compare and despair, they feel, oh, yes, I am different than my sibling. And in a way that's not, I'm lesser or I'm comparing myself to them, but I'm my own person. I'm on my individual journey. My parent sees me. Do you see how that happens? So to switch to redirect the it's not fair conversation, here's what I want you to do. Validate the emotion, number one. Number two, do not engage in any conversation about the person that's not the person you're talking to right now. Not talking about the friend, not talking about the sibling, not talking about the classmate, the cousin, the whomever that they're comparing themselves to. That's step two. And then step three is make that conversation really about your child and not in a negative way. About your child, meaning this is what you're working towards. This is when it's going to happen. This is how it's going to happen. And I see you. I see you. I notice this, and this about you. And I am customizing, personalizing, individualizing my parenting to you. And now this it's not fair conversation now becomes a conversation that's so much about attunement and validation. And that is magic. So if this sounds amazing to you, it is. It's flipping amazing. When you have these conversations that are like classic parenting conversations, but then they go in this like magical direction, it feels like a little shivery orgasm through your entire body. Okay. And when you work with me, when you learn these tools, you're going to get to start having more and more of these conversations where you're like, oh my God, here it comes. The classic, it's not fair. Oh my God, that went this other way. Oh, here's the classic kid complaining about school when I picked them up from the playground. Oh, wait a minute. It went a different direction this time. Right? These conversations, these moments that you know as a parent, you know your kid, you know the stuff that's going to just be plaguing you. And it's going to be like, oh my God, here we go again. I cannot wait. One of my favorite things is to get a phone call. Like, actually, I just got like 2 days ago from a dad. I got a video message from him saying, oh, I had one of those moments where he was like, what was it that they were arguing about? Oh, his kids were fighting. Talk about very similar, right? It's not fair, sibling rivalry. His kids were fighting. And he sent me a message after he like dealt with it. And he said, normally I would go in there and be like, who started this? What's going on in here? Why are you acting this way? Right. And he said, but I didn't do that. I went in and I said, wow, it looks like we're having a hard time. Looks like we need to take some space from each other. He separated the kids. Everyone calmed down. And then they all came back together and had this like really great copacetic conversation that smoothed everything over. The kids like apologized to each other without him even prompting them. And he sent me this message back and he's like, this is like night and day. And I'm like, I know, it's so exciting. My favorite thing to do is celebrate with clients. So if you're ready, if you are ready to have your conversations go a totally different direction than they normally do, if you're ready to handle these, oh my God, here we go again, conversations in a whole new way, it's time to set up a discovery call with me. It's free. You're crazy not to. It's an hour and a half where I get to know you, give you my feedback. You're going to walk away from that session with concrete stuff that you can implement immediately. And I hear all the time from people on these discovery calls like, heck yeah, I want to work with you. And also, like, this call itself has already been so amazingly helpful. So even if you decide that was nice, but no thanks, you are going to have something to walk away from this conversation that will literally, no joke, I'm not being hyperbolic, change your life and change the life of your kid. So what are you waiting for? Set it up. And I cannot wait to talk to you soon, and have a great week, everybody. Bye.
The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/Kaplan call, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.